Did you know that Conference USA was once a great, or at least almost great conference, and it could be the answer to the conference realignment conundrum that we currently have in college football and college sports across the board? I mean, just look at this lineup from the 2004 season. You got Louisville, Memphis, Cincinnati, Southern Miss, UAB, TCU, Tulane, South Florida, Houston, Army, East Carolina. These are heavy hitters in the kind of mid-major tier of college football that we've seen evaporate into the lower levels of the top conferences over the past probably 10 to 15 seasons. But in this season, Louisville actually finished number 6 at the end of the season after beating number 10 Boise State in the Liberty Bowl 44-40. This was in 2005. Can you imagine the number 7 and the number 10 teams facing off not even in a BCS bowl, not even in a New Year's Six bowl, anywhere near this era of college football? And although it was born out of necessity for most of the teams that were in the original lineup in 1996, it was very much ahead of its time for what college football would eventually be and what a mid-major conference could position to be in the college football playoff era, especially the 12-team college football playoff era. So Conference USA was put together when the Great Midwest and the Metro Conferences merged in 1995 to create Conference USA. And originally, they were mostly focused on basketball and kind of metropolitan cities across the kind of, Mississippi Valley Basin. I don't know what the best way to put it, but it was sprawling from all the way up in Wisconsin down to Texas and over to Florida. So there was teams all across kind of the eastern part of the United States. And there were a few teams that did sponsor football, but they were still playing an independent status in 95. It wasn't until 96 that they actually originally started to sponsor college football as a conference. But that first season, there were only 6 teams that were actually participating in Conference USA college football. It was Southern Miss, Houston, Cincinnati, Louisville, Memphis, and Tulane. Now, these are heavy hitters, and again, this tier that we're calling kind of mid-major college football. There are, 4 of these teams? 3 of these teams that are now currently in power conferences with Louisville in the ACC and then Cincinnati and Houston, of course, in the Big 12. Memphis is trying desperately to get into a power conference. Tulane is probably going to make the college football playoff this season. And Southern Miss was a very solid team in the 90s. Maybe they haven't been as great currently, but they were a very strong team in the 90s, and they actually finished first in the conference in 96. And while Conference USA in a lot of ways was ahead of the times, it was also really behind the times in some ways. By focusing on college basketball, they really did not see what the future of college sports, and even the present at the time, was for how you made money and how college sports power was going to be distributed. Because in the 70s and 80s, college basketball was the true moneymaker across college sports. But by the time we got to the 90s, it was obvious that college football was the driver of not only college sports revenue, but college sports power. Because in the 70s and even to an extent the 80s, there were only so many channels. Cable was not a big thing. You were mostly getting your 3 kind of NBC, ABC, CBS channels. And there's only so many college football games that you can put on 3 channels on one day, right? But for college basketball, they're played throughout the week. So you could just kind of stagger your games with other big conferences. Say you're going to play your games on Wednesday and Friday because the Big East is playing on Tuesday and Thursday. Well, CBS has a slot for you, or NBC has a slot for you during those times. After the 1984 Oklahoma Board of Regents versus NCAA, when conferences started to be in control of media rights contracts, we started to see a bunch of shakeups. And in that same time, we started to see expansions of cable into places like ESPN, Turner with TNT, TBS, and even Fox emerging as a non-cable but big 3 alternative in broadcast networks. So we started to see a lot more places that wanted to show sports, I wanted to show live events pop up at the same time with conferences being able to make their own contracts. So when Conference USA comes about, they take these 2 kind of mid-major basketball conferences, combine them into a really strong basketball conference and a somewhat strong college football conference. But of course, they are stronger on the basketball side with their current composition of teams than they are on the football side. So they prioritize basketball over football. And that's all fine for the basketball schools, but things kind of changed in 1998 when Tulane goes 12-0, finishes 7th in the AP, and beats by a good margin, 2 touchdowns, BYU in the Liberty Bowl to finish off the season. And at that time, we didn't really have a pathway for G5 or at that time non-BCS, non-AQ schools to make it to the national championship. But it was obvious that Tulane was one of the best teams in the country. And this kind of starts a wave along with the Mountain West that was to come about, the WAC that started to have some success when Boise State comes up, that there were non-power schools that really had something to say in the national conversation because we've moved away from the newspaper polls being the ones that decide the championships, and we've moved into this framework for national championships, especially by 98. We are firmly in the BCS era. There starts to be, some evidence that maybe was always there, that there should be openings for all teams to be in that, not just the 1 and 2, and not just really teams from power conferences. And this all kind of culminates in the golden era of Conference USA, and that's really between 2001 and 2005, because through the 90s, a few teams are added to the football side of Conference USA that really strengthen their roster. So in 97, East Carolina joins as a football-only school. They later join as a full member. In 98, Army joins as a football-only school. And in 99, UAB, who had been a full non-football member, joins the college football side of Conference USA. But the big hitter was in 2001 when TCU joins the conference from the WAC and they become a full 10-member college football conference. And they really have an argument for being the best non-BCS conference in the country at that time. Because in that 4-year span, both Louisville and TCU had multiple top 25 finishes. Memphis and Southern Miss also finished in the top 25 in that time. And then, of course, that 2004 season that we started on, where Louisville finished 6th in the nation and won their final game against a top 10 opponent in Boise State, where they probably should have both been in a BCS bowl to really codify that in the history books. And they would have been if it was just 1 or 2 years later when the BCS changed their rules. That was really when Conference USA had shown to be something of a power in college football. And this might go over some of the younger viewers' heads, but listen to the head coaches that were in Conference USA in the 2004 season. Bobby Petrino at Louisville, Gary Patterson at TCU, Mark D'Antonio at Cincinnati, Art Briles at Houston, Jim Leavitt at USF. These are all major coaches in the landscape of college football in the 2010s. Now, Art Briles, Gary Patterson, Bobby Petrino, maybe they have some things in their personal life or how they decide to run their program that weren't necessarily the most savory. They still were successful college football coaches, and there are not very many savory successful college football coaches, to be honest. But of course, in college football, it couldn't just be that we had this little slice of strong teams that might push up every single season that are not sullied by the major conferences. It had to go astray. And remember what I said about Conference USA valuing college basketball in the early years of the conference. Well, there's another conference near and dear to college basketball's heart that was doing the same thing that started to have trouble with college football starting in 2004, and that is the Big East. Because the Big East, who's probably the most classic college basketball conference, decides to start sponsoring college football in 1991 when they convinced Miami, who's probably the best college football program of the 80s, to join their conference as a full member starting with the 91 season. And they get another member, Virginia Tech, who was currently a Metro Conference member, to join as a football-only member in the 91 season. And both of those teams have some good success as Big East members, with Miami winning a national championship in 2001 and Virginia Tech being a runner-up, I think, in 99 in the BCS championship when they had Michael Vick there, bark, bark. But the rest of the conference really doesn't have any success. So in 2004, Virginia Tech and Miami jump ship to join the ACC, followed by Boston College in the following season. They're looking for a more football-focused conference, but there is definitely a domino effect with them leaving the Big East. Because in 2005, 5 founding members of Conference USA decide to leave the conference for the Big East. That's Cincinnati, DePaul, Louisville, Marquette, and South Florida. 3 college football members and 2 of their stronger college basketball members. And this starts a basically 2-decade run of Conference USA scrambling to stay alive as a top-level college sports conference that includes FBS football. So this golden era for Conference USA football really only lasts for about 4 seasons. And even then, they don't get to reach their heights as a collective, even with Louisville's magnificent 2004 season. Now, Conference USA isn't arguably the worst conference in FBS, and they have weird schools that probably shouldn't be in top-level college football, and 4 schools that have decided that their women's teams need a different name than their men's teams, the Lady whatevers. But it's left for people like you and I to wonder what Conference USA could have been if it was able to grow into what it might have been, if it was able to take the potential of the teams that it had in 2004 and run with that to add just a few more teams and make it this strong mid-major conference that could be a force in college football. Well, today I'm going to put together my dream lineup from all 36 teams that have spent any time in Conference USA and put together the best 12 that would make the best conference for modern college football. And here it is. It's Houston, Louisville, UCF, USF, Tulane, Tulsa, Memphis, Cincinnati, SMU, Southern Miss, TCU, and East Carolina. Half of these schools are currently in a power conference, and the other half have some of the best G5 programs currently in college football, of course, with Tulane, Memphis, and USF. Now, I'm not saying that this is rivaling the Big Ten or the SEC. But what I am saying is that with a pathway for a G5 team to make it every single season in the current college football playoff format, we need a conference that can legitimately put college football playoff teams in that spot. Right now, we're going to get Tulane, or we're going to get Memphis, or we're going to get USF, or we're going to get James Madison. But more than anything, those teams are in there by default. We need teams that actually play the other best G5 teams and can truly have a puncher's chance in the college football playoff. Every couple seasons, we'll get a Boise State. Every couple seasons, we might get what Tulane is this year or what James Madison is. But really, we need conferences that are putting together teams that can actually compete and are proven to be able to compete because they've gone through a G5 gauntlet, not gone through teams that were in the FCS 2 years ago. I think that is a major thing missing from college football currently. I think that having 18 teams in the Big Ten, 16 teams in the SEC, 45 teams in the ACC, it doesn't prove that these teams are the best. And teams, even like my team, Oregon, are getting away with having not a difficult conference schedule, but they can say they're in the Big Ten. We need to shrink the top conferences, take the second-tier teams in those conferences, and put them together in second-tier conferences, truly second-tier conferences that can put together teams that are going to be able to compete in the college football playoff, even if they're not from the best conference. We don't need to have everybody in the top conferences, and if we're insistent on having the biggest spending programs all together in one conference, then make it only them and make other conferences that can create competitors for them in the college football playoff with how it's currently set up. And in the near future, there very well may be incentive for these lower tier power teams to break off and make their own conferences, as there are going to be tiered revenue systems in all of the top conferences, as evidenced by the potential private equity deal that the Big Ten is currently doing. That's why USC doesn't like it. That's why Michigan doesn't like it, because it's a tiered revenue system that is giving more money to the top teams and less money to the bottom teams, because it's recognized that those teams are surviving off of the top tier teams' revenue generation. But if those lower level teams want to truly create revenue, get in a conference where you can compete and give your fans something to spend money on. Don't just be happy with being a 2-10 team in the Big Ten or a 3-7, 3-9 team in the SEC or the ACC. Get with programs that you can actually compete with and make college football and college basketball games that people want to spend money on, instead of waiting around to get money from people that are not in your league. But thanks for watching that video. Make sure that you like and subscribe and hype the video. It helps small content creators. I'm a small content creator and I could use all the help I could get. If you've made it this far, leave a comment and let me know what you think. Do you think that my construction of Conference USA could survive in modern college football and maybe even compete for a college football playoff spot? Do you think that there is a space for these kind of second-tier conferences in modern college football? And do you think that that will actually ever happen with the way college football is moving? If you want to watch more videos, I do have this for you. Over here, I got a video yesterday that I did, which is to see if College Football 26 has an SEC bias. Check it out if you haven't seen it yet. Up here, I've got my most popular video that I've done recently, which is College Football 26 with conferences from 1996. It does include Conference USA. Other than that, I've got my subscribe link on this side here, and we'll check you next time. See ya!